Hello and welcome. This is Paul Sindhu on Tuesday, November the 20th, 2018. So as I'm just driving in, I wanted to continue this topic of one of the most important doctrines in the Bible, which is the definition of the word image. Okay? For example, in Genesis 1:26, we hear God say, Let us make man in our image, in our likeness. Okay, so image in the Bible means two things. One is the word likeness. Likeness means something that is similar. Okay, it is like if you take an original and you make a photocopy out of it. Okay, or you hand draw something that looks like the original. Okay, but it is not identical to it. That would be something that would be the word likeness. Okay, and then you have the word image, which means that it is an exact duplicate. Okay, so essentially this word image, it relates directly to the topic of reproduction. Okay, an image is a reproduction of an original, and that, my friends, is exactly what reproduction is all about, whether it's human reproduction or it's animal reproduction, or it is God reproducing himself. It is that we make copies. Essentially, when men and women have children, they are essentially making copies of themselves. So they are taking what was 2, like with Adam and Eve, and then they became 4 and 16 and 256 and so on and so forth, because this multiplication happens exponentially. And that is the idea of reproduction, is to take an original and to make a copy out of it. And why do we do that? Like, as far as human beings are concerned, we make copies because that is how we get more of our own selves to relate with, to have interaction with, to do things with, to love, and in this time right now, because we live in an evil time, even to hate or to do evil things, whatever. But generally speaking, the idea of reproduction is to have somebody that you can think of as your own kind, as your own species, who is going to be able to understand you and to have, therefore, to be able to relate to you. That is where we get the word relationship, is that we have the same type of beings that can relate to each other on an equal level. That is when human beings, when a father or a mother, they have a child, a son or a daughter, the son and the daughter, once they have grown up, at some point in time, they will have matured enough that they will be able to fully understand and comprehend their parents, and therefore they will become equals. Okay, that is the whole idea of reproduction, and reproduction simply means, just as it does in a photocopier, is to take an original and to make a copy out of it. This is exactly the whole purpose of creation, is for God, that he wanted to make copies of himself. That is why the word image is used in the Bible. Let us make man in our image, in our likeness. And this imaging, when we begin to understand that the word image is referring to the actual person, not to the body, okay? It refers to the actual person. Therefore, for God to make copies of himself, to have his own image on beings that he was going to create, like with this said, let us make man in our image. And then it said, so God created man in his own image, in Genesis 1:27. So this is a creature that is created by the Creator, and he has been created for the purpose of bearing his image. His image how? On the inside. Okay, so that the person that was going to be created would be the same person as God. Okay, he would think like God, he would feel like God, he would make decisions like God. He would be able to relate to God on a mature level once he had matured enough, just like as a human child, once they are grown up and matured, they can relate to their parent on a level of equals. Okay, that is the only way you can have a satisfactory relationship, is when two people have the same level of maturity and understanding. Okay, therefore, for God to be able to have people that were going to be able to relate to him, to have children that would not just remain children but would one day become adults that were going to relate with him, he needed to program them, literally to program them with his own personality, with his own consciousness, with his own conscience, with everything that he is. Okay? And this could only happen as a process. Because, you know, when a child is born, this we can learn a great deal from how human reproduction works, okay? A human being who is born is not born like fully grown and fully matured and fully understanding, is he? No, of course not. So what do parents need to do? They need to program the child. Essentially, that's what education is. That's what teaching, you know, whatever parents teach their kids. And the parents teach their kids mostly not directly. Yes, we do tell our kids certain things that we want them to be and they want them to do. But mostly children learn by observing the parents. Okay, they become, like, you know, you have that expression, like father, like son. And that is because as the son observes the father as he is growing up, he is being programmed into becoming the same person that the Father is. And this is entirely and absolutely true in the case of God as well. That God had to show us who he is, and as we see and observe, then we are transformed. We then become the Father, like Son. So unless we know who the Father is and what he is, how can we become like him? Okay, so when Adam was born, although his body was mature, as a person he was not mature. He was just an infant. Okay, just like an infant, he had no idea yet of who God was or who God is. Okay, he had to learn that by having interaction with God. Okay, that's something that needed to happen, and that, my friends, is the story of the Bible. That God, all the things that he has created, they have been created with this purpose in mind, that he was going to bring forth a race of beings who would be one with him. One meaning that they would be the same person that he is. Okay? That in their thoughts. And when you have God says God is love. Okay? The best person that God can create, one who is never going to be any threat to him, or who is not going to want to do any harm to him or to any of his other creatures, is himself, because he is love. So whenever he creates somebody, and like him, they too are perfect in love, then, my friends, you know, they can relate to God as equals. They can love him as he loves them, and they will love everything that he has done and everything that he is and everything he has made. They will not be evil and try to kill and to be greedy and to be, you know, wanting all these kind of things that cause destruction and death and misery in God's creation. No, I mean, all those things were necessary. All that evil was necessary because it is through the agency of evil that God did something, showed us something which he couldn't have done otherwise, which is ultimately the programming that God needs to program us with so that we will be his exact image, his exact character would be through the demonstration of love. Unless we have seen that love, we would not be able to understand love. And that is where John 3:16 comes in. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. So what did he have to do to prove his love, how great this love is? He had to give himself. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. Okay, the Son is God in the flesh. That's who he is. Okay, and I'm not going to go into it in greater detail there, but that's what God had to do. God had to lay down his own life to show us that his love for us is so great that that which is the most precious possession of his, which is his own life, he wouldn't spare that. For God, who spared not his own son, but gave him up for us all, how shall he not with him freely give us all things? Okay, so these things happened for a reason. These things happened by design, by plan, by purpose. The purposes of God. That's how and why they happened. Okay, so when this demonstration had been made, when love had been put on the cross and displayed, okay, love's greatest enemy, love's enemy, the enemy which has an equal power as love, is death. You can read that in Song of Solomon, chapter 8, verse 6. It says, love is strong as death. Okay, so this clash of love, and God is love, of God and death, had to be orchestrated. And when love arose victorious, when God arose victorious, when Jesus resurrected from the dead, then it became apparent. Then we came to understand that the greatest power, God's greatest power, is not like, that he can create the stars and moon and sun and all that. His greatest power is love. Okay? That is what he is. The Bible says God is love. And until that demonstration had been made, we wouldn't have understood that. And now that it has been, now it is possible for us to be perfected in love, which means love can be programmed into us, which before it could not, because we have seen it now. Just as a child sees a father, and subconsciously he becomes that father, okay, in character, because he has spent his time with him, he has observed what he is, and without even knowing it, he'll become that. And that is what happens to us. That is why in 1 John we read that, we love God because he first loved us. So how did we know that he first loved us? Because he proved it to us on the cross of Jesus Christ. That is how we came to know that God is love. Okay, so all that steps from Adam in the Garden of Eden, and even before, when the devil came into existence, when the angels sinned, all those things had to happen. Okay, so once this demonstration of love had been shown to us, once it had been proven to us that God indeed is love, where his love is greater than all our own evil, that no evil can overpower that love. When that had been shown to us, then now it becomes possible for us to be programmed. As we believe that love, we ourselves become that love. That, my friends, is the purpose of creation. That's what God is doing here with us. Okay, it is nothing that is just happening randomly or without any reason or purpose. Oh, why is there so much sickness and disease and death and everything else in the world? Well, it had to be that way. It had to be that way, but God has overcome all of that. And in this short time, which we are given in this body, or 80 years or whatever lifespan people have, it is sufficient for us to come to this understanding that God is love. That is what we are here to learn and to become. And when we have become that, then you shall see that life is, the purpose of life is going to be completed. It is going to be fulfilled. Then we are going to be the perfect companions for God. Then we can be God's equals as his friends. And when I say, that we are God's equals, people take it the wrong way. By equals, I mean we are equal in our thoughts. In Isaiah, we read that my thoughts are higher than your thoughts, and my ways are higher than your ways. Okay, God tells us that. In our present state, that is true. Okay, but as long as that difference in our thought processes and who we are exists, we can never have a perfect relationship with God. Therefore, it is not that God was going to lower his mind to our level. He was going to bring our mind to his level. That is why he has given us the mind of Christ, so that we can think like God. And when we think like God, God doesn't think evil or to do evil or to anything like that. He says those things, Jeremiah, you can read, that all the evils that these people are doing, sacrificing their babies and everything else, he said that didn't even come into his mind. God cannot be tempted with evil. And that, my friends, is absolutely the truth. That God cannot be tempted with evil. And that is why we have to be made the same type of persons. We have to become that type of being, like God, that cannot be tempted with evil. And that's how we become God's equals, that we are immune to evil because we are perfect in love. That is the only way you can become immune to evil, is to be perfected in love. And that couldn't have happened, like, Adam, when he was created, couldn't be just down. This love could not just be downloaded into him. It had to be shown to him. He had to experience it. And it is because he became evil and God did good to him that, despite his man's own wickedness and evil heart and all the sin that we all are filled with, God still loved us. Okay? That while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. That, this is how we came to know that no matter, it is not our evil that can destroy the love of God for us. It cannot. Therefore, we in the end surrender and we say, okay, we give up this evil because this love is what we desire. This love has been born in our heart. The love of God is shed abroad in our hearts. Okay, and when that love begins to overpower the evil that is in us, then eventually, when we are become perfect, as we will be the equals of God in love. That's how we become the equals of God, that we love him equally as much as he loves us. Mission accomplished, my friends. God, nothing shall be impossible with God, and this task of actually fulfilling of perfecting us in love, it is not an easy task at all. Look at the price that God himself had to pay. And if he could only begin to even understand a fraction of this price, and it is not just the price in terms of price, is not just in terms of sorry, I'm just stuck in a bit of traffic here, so I'm kind of paying attention to the road. That it is not a price just in terms of his death on the cross. God suffers everything that all of his creation suffers. All of it. Okay? From the beginning of suffering, he has suffered it all. He had to pay that price to bring us this knowledge of his love, to show us, to demonstrate to us, to put it on display. On that cross, his love was displayed. God is love, and God hanging on that cross, it is his love that was put on display. And once you behold that love and you believe it, my God, you will see yourself how you will begin to change. And the more you begin to see the love, the more you love in turn. And now you have a relationship with God, which is the relationship of love. Right? That's what God wanted. He wanted to make copies of himself that could love him. And this is how that programming of that, this is what needed to happen to make that perfect copy, was that he had to show us that love. And he had to, only way to show us that love was if the creature that he demonstrated it to was an evil creature. He didn't need to demonstrate it. If Adam never did anything wrong, he was never evil, God wouldn't need to die for him, and man would never have known how much God loves him. So you see, nothing has happened by accident. It has all been done by plan and design. And God's planning is perfect. Nothing shall be impossible for him, but nothing is also going to happen that he has not planned. That's our God. And when I think of this here, it overwhelms me. It is, in the Old Testament, you always read the burden of the word of the Lord. Okay, and that is it. It is like a weighty understanding. It literally weighs you down. You go, wow, goodness, like, your heart feels, that love, like, it just feels like so, I can understand that weight. I don't know how to explain it, but it is because you understand, like, how magnificent and how great our God is, that in comparison to him, we truly are small. We are like microscopic. Okay. And yet it says, though I am lowly, yet God has respect unto me. The psalmist King David wrote. Okay. And that is our God, that He has treated us as His equals, and the thing that He requires from us is not to, run around saying, oh, no, I'm just an evil sinner, I can never be. Yes, if you're not, then you're never going to be his relative. You're not going to be His friend. You're not going to be His spouse. You're not going to be His child, His son, His daughter. You won't be. All you will be is an evil worm, and you will not make it to the kingdom of God. You gotta become equal in love with God, otherwise you will not make it. All right, I think I have explained what this process of imaging, of reproduction, of making another one of yourself, from an original is. God is the original, and He has copied Himself onto our hearts and onto our minds. And my goodness, what a gift! What a gift! Think about it and appreciate what God has done for you. This is Paul Sandhu.